great pleasure to introduce a man I've come to know as a dear friend in the last many years, Suhel Seth, ad man, marketing maverick, author, traveler, writer, bon vivant. I think the list just goes on. In a slight departure from our usual format, we don't have someone conversing with Suhel, so we requested Suhel to speak for a bit, and then we'll open it up to Q&A and take it from there. And of course, at the end, as always, he's happy to sign a copy of the book for everyone. I would like to also thank our partners in this program, Sri Siemens, Siyahi, the literary consultancy from Jaipur, Pravakatan Foundation, and T2. And with that, I'll hand over to Suhel. Thank you.
Hi. So, rather than make it, as Pradeep said, a talk to myself session, I'll just very briefly talk about the book, very, very briefly. There are very few books written on corporate India, even fewer on people who make corporate India for two reasons. Number one, people who run companies believe that if they talk, they'll be under some kind of scanner. And as you know, we live in notorious times. We live under a very liberal, cultured regime in today's world. So it makes things even more difficult for people to actually talk about what they do. Number two, if you look at the Americas, both Latin and North, you'll see that there are a lot of books now being written on the corporate world that exists in those parts, because it serves as an encouragement, as an inspiration, and more importantly, which people fail to realize, is it's also an effective chronicler of the times of those countries. If you read this particular book and you read some of the stories, if you read the story of, let's say, Sunil Mittal, or for that matter, a Ratan Tata, it's not only about what they feel, but what we've also done is we've got essays almost like a cladding around their mantras of success. So it also suggests why they got into the kind of businesses they did. What were the fears? For example, the only Calcutta who features in the book is Sanjeev Goenka, thanks to Mamata Banerjee. I mean, he doesn't feature thanks to her, but he features because Mamata Banerjee is so effective that she hasn't allowed anyone else to progress. I'm sure it must be music to the Telegraph's ears, because Avik Sarkar was once in bed with them and then he fell out. So the old saying is, never go to bed with an elephant. You never know when it rolls over and the pleasure turns into pain. But that will come to later. So it's a very interesting analysis of what we're going through in India. There's a story, I mean, there are anecdotes or essays around Kumar Mangalam Birla and the challenges he faces. Being a Marwari, running a global business, and wondering whether to serve butter chicken in Australia at his staff canteen. Now, these are real issues. There's Anand Mahindra. The good thing was that one used one's relationship with each of these people to get them to write. It is impossible otherwise to get Ratan Tata and Mukesh Ambani in one book. I remember some of us have written for a book called Reimagining India, published by McKinsey. And there were 65 essays, 30 by Indians and 35 by non-Indians. And amongst the Indians, I remember they couldn't get Ratan to write because Mukesh had already written. So those issues are also that, are playing. I've purposely chosen only Indian CEOs in India. So it was interesting. The book was launched by Jaitley, by Arun in Delhi on the 8th of April. There were about 700 people, but in the first row, there were two global Indian CEOs. There was Arun Sareen who ran Vodafone, there was Anshu who ran Deutsche Bank. And both of them asked me, we're not in the book. I said, well, you'll have to read it to find out why. Because we didn't want a situation, but then it never stops. Then I have to include Satya Nadella, I'll have to include Indra Nooyi. So it was important, therefore, to decide a couple of things. So what we decided were the following. It had to be contemporary CEOs. We didn't want to profile the dead and the gone. So GRD is not in the book, nor is Ghanshyam Das Birla. We wanted people who were representative not just of industry, but of the nuances of industry. So there are people who represent today's India. That in many industries, especially what I would call the digital space, I have to imagine more and more women to be right up in front. For instance, I've never understood why a woman didn't start a Myntra or a Jabong, or why a woman doesn't head Amazon. If most of your online shopping, we have discovered that 67% of online visitors are women. Let's assume of that 67, only 40% buy. It's still a very substantive number. The book is not meant to be instructive, because I don't believe people engage with books through instruction. You have enough of them in your textbooks while you're in school or college. It is meant to involve, inspire, and incite. It's meant to involve you with what's happening around us. Industry touches on every which way. Rahul Gandhi is an absolute idiot to say that, business is irrelevant. After all, their families made so much money off businessmen. So this whole thing of attacking business will hit him hard in the years to come. So I think it's important to understand that you've got to be involved, not just with the idea of India, but with the idea of business in India, because they're the ones who produce jobs. They're the ones who actually set skills in motion. What's the point of saying 20 million by 2020 of skilled people when you don't have enough jobs for them? Today, the only Braille newspaper in India is produced by Mukesh Ambani's wife. Did you know that? No. When the Uttarakhand havoc happened, the tragedy happened, they spent 124 crores within 4 days. No one knows. Because they've come to be known for other things. The fact that Anand Mahindra supports 27 Nanni Kali schools and the initiative is humongous. Not known. Now, there's the contradiction. I've often asked these leaders, and it's mentioned in the book, that why don't you talk about all of this? No, in India, if you talk about it, people will say, karni, bolni, whatever the hell they say in Hindi. But the reality is you don't talk about it. You get to be known for all the other stuff. You don't inspire people. People think you're a robber barons. People equate you with cronyism. Where do you go? And to my mind, there's a book waiting there as how Indian industry has actually taken initiative in certain areas. But there is complete mayhem. Fourth, to my mind, it's a book which is just a mere footprint in time. It's a chronicler. It's at an inflection point of this country. It chronicles what all has happened till now within certain industries and how these leaders have actually defied the rules of the game. Some have even bent them. But how they've defied the rules of the game. I remember many, many years ago, it was 2000, and we were just starting the World Travel Tourism Council chapter in India. Vicky Oberoi and I were Amar Vilas. And I told him, I said, there's one guy who built a mausoleum which cost shitloads of money, and you build this, will you ever make money? He's saying, actually, you're right. But today the Vilases stand for something. They inspired the Taj to go one step better and actually create and recreate real palaces which today have a higher ARR than the Vilas properties. Now, the Taj, to my mind, may not have done that had there not been competition of the kind that Vicky Oberoi created. So, to my mind, you've got interesting things that are going on. And I'll end with Ratan's essay, the chapter, where he candidly talks about chorus. He talks about his beliefs. I remember when Singur happened and with this Mamata Banerjee created mayhem, he told the press, he says, I'm the kind of person, put a gun on my head, you either shoot or move, but I'm not going to budge. And he walked out of Singur. So, finally, this is only one of the many books that should be written. This is one of the many books that should chronicle our times. This is one of the many books that should inspire young people who don't necessarily need the facade or the comfort or the convenience of, conformed societies like a degree or management or blah, 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 but who can even start up. I mean, look at America, for instance. So it's essentially a book which captures the times we live in through a very focused prism, which is industry. Which is corporate leaders, leaders who have used business to make a change, not only for themselves, but in their own society, and people who believe that many a time they were challenged. And this is by far the toughest market to do business in. It is tough for the honest. It is very easy for the dishonest. It's tough if you want to play by the rules. It's very easy if you want to create the rules. I don't know when that will change. I hope Modi changes it, but we don't know. Modi is not exactly the archangel you and I think him to be. So these are the realities.
So, just want to ask about your selection of the people. You said, I haven't read the book, but one of the things you said is that you wanted people who made it in their own right. And sitting in Calcutta, where we're all aware of the contributions of CSC, etc., you said that...
Great question. Excellent question. No. So here, great question. That is also what we felt initially after I'd done the selection. And there's a gentleman called Sunny Sen who was doing all the research for the book. First, CSC was not an inheritance product. R.P. Goenka was vehemently opposed to CSC. He was vehemently opposed to its acquisition. He was vehemently opposed to putting any money in it. He said this is a dead project. It's a distribution company. It'll never make money. In the mid-90s, the company almost was on the verge of shutting down. Sanjeev Goenka took a punt and said, no, I can turn this business around. Because remember, almost all the blue chip companies within the RPG group were sitting in Bombay under Harsh's charge. He turned that around. What Sanjeev did brilliantly was, not only did he turn it around, he transformed it from a distribution company to also a generation company. They then decided to become a power producer rather than just a power distributor. Number three, he again took another calculated risk, which will earn him more money than CSC will, when he bought First Source. There was no business for him to diversify into what is a pure play technology company. The third, which very few Marwadis do, because of a conservative outlook, he flipped Saregama. He shut down all the stores. He moved Saregama from a brick and mortar, from a real life, business, to a completely digital platform, and actually took the lead over all the other players. So in many ways, it's very interesting. Now the fourth thing which might be of interest to you, and see, Sanjeev is launching the book this evening. I mean, he's in conversation with me. It'll be interesting for me to ask. Again, he has not marketed his own stuff well.
Criticisms of Get to the Top, and this has been, and why I ask this is because I've not heard your perspective on this, is that these two books perhaps have just skimmed the surface. They're not books that dive down deep. So you throw up facets, but you don't go down to explore them, and you leave it there. What's your take on this?
Completely agree. I'm not a deep sea diver. I have to make books interesting. Ultimately, books have to be read. They haven't got to be put on shelves, which is why I never write a coffee table book. Other than your mother, who will die holding it, no one else will read it. So why write? Now, if I do a deep dive, then a deep dive could not allow for me to cover more than 3 CEOs. Suppose you were to do a deep dive on Ratan Tata. Let's take Ratan. So Ratan took over the group in 1990 and left the group in 2013-14. In that span, he completely altered the house of Tata totally. Whether it was the logo, whether it was the royalty payments, then whether it was company forays, whether it was restructuring, whether it was group policies, then the acquisition of the companies, the selling of companies. I mean, you'd need about at least 100 pages on just that. In fact, I was telling Mohan some time ago, I had lunch with Mr. Tata a couple of weeks ago, just generally because I just love the man. I think he's an outstanding human being. Outstanding. That book will sell in millions while I'll be sitting on an island sipping a pina colada, reading the T2 with great delight on my illegally smuggled iPad. Yeah, but that's a great question. Leadership, articulation is different, but styles are more or less similar. See, Rusi then wrote about it much later. But one of the things, I still remember we were on the 18th floor, Tata Center one day. So I said, he said, "Hey, bloody MBAs." So I said, "Why?" He said, "It's MBWA, management by walking around." So I said, "But everyone loves you." "Yes, but I listen to all the bastards and I do exactly what I want." He said, "But it's important for you to show that you're listening to all of them." So dictatorship of a benevolent nature is a great virtue. Now you can't be listening to everyone. But here, and this I will say, I don't know if it will ever be written in a book because this is not a book which is looking at leadership styles. But I think the greatest federalist I have ever seen, much to almost frustration levels, is Anand Mahindra. I have not seen a man who delegates as much as he does. I have not seen a man who will not take a decision, even though he's convinced, without getting the CEO of that business on board. And he will give him the greatest respect. I mean, that is very unusual. The other guy I've seen operationally is Mukesh. Mukesh will only have a 5-minute meeting where he'll ask you 2 questions. How big will we be? 1 or 2? You tell him 2, he'll say, "No, for 1, how much?" Say, "Another 4 billion. So one day, we all, it was at home, so I said, "What is this number 1, number 2? India." So I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Globally." So now, it's not surprising that Economic Times publishes a report yesterday or day before saying his investment even before launching 4G is the highest in telecommunications, higher than Airtel, Vodafone and Idea. And he hasn't even launched the service. But he's already pumped in $14 billion US. Because his belief is scale is size. Size is not scale. So if I have that level of scale, then the level of attractiveness, stickiness for consumers is that much more. Which, अभी वो दिन नहीं आए. We run, thanks to Arnab Goswami, a blackmail network on television. You say no and we will screw you on TV every night till you say yes. No, I'm just joking. Don't really quote all this here. You all also indulge in the same, so big deal. No one. Not one person. Yeah, not one person. In fact, it was very interesting because it was just an email that went out. And then 1 or 2 people wanted phone call. But see, many of them, one was also meeting in any case. So it's not, there wasn't an issue. And it's a quick book. We started in September last year. And the book was ready in December. And then because I was also traveling and, I didn't have the time, and then JT was traveling because he had the Davos and Washington and budget and all that stuff. So that's why we pushed it to the 8th of April. But otherwise, we were ready in December, but the publishers also felt that do it post the budget because there's too much surround sound around the budget, on the budget. So,
may I then request Nayantara to please come up and, as a mark of respect to Suhel, present him this Uttari.
What is this one?
Yeah.
You should wear it like this?
Yes, why not? So
Keep it
thank you
alive,
very
Kim.
much.
Thank you.
Looking forward to more such interesting